Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and today we're visiting with quite an incredible individual, Kerstin Lindquist, who is the author of a new book entitled 5 Months Apart. It's a story of adoption and infertility, and an amazingly transparent story that will touch the heart of each and every one of you. Kerstin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, for those of you that shop on QVC, you might recognize Kerstin from her Saturday morning show, one of the most popular on QVC, or maybe you even recognize her from The West Wing or The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She has a lengthy resume of a start in a desire to be in politics and winding up as a reporter for a station in California, not far from where she grew up in California. But here you were growing up in a home and you had this vision for your life. Was there somebody in the family, uncle, a grandfather, father that was an attorney, a judge, someone that you wanted to model your life after?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know if my mother was amazing and inspiring. She was always my best friend. She raised me as a single mother for a while before my stepfather, who's an amazing man as well, came into the picture. So she was always strong, and she always made a difference. And I think that's why I wanted to be a judge. I wanted to be an environmental judge or somebody that made a difference. So I think that's why I wanted to go that path. Things changed completely because the Lord always has a better plan. But I think it was her who inspired me, and she still does through everything.
Was this now a faith background? Did she raise you in the church?
Absolutely, yes. So I was raised through the church. In fact, some of my best friends and my best memories of growing up are, Wednesday night youth groups and being very involved. I went to Christian school for a long time and then went over to public, but that was always very, very important for hers to raise me in the faith.
So you had a path that you kind of charted out for yourself. You had a vision as to how you were going to go about accomplishing what you wanted to accomplish. You wound up going to Franklin Marshall College, which very well known for putting out politicians and people who are in government who have a desire. There's several universities that are known for that, and Franklin Marshall is one of them.
Right.
And here you were taken out of your element because you came east.
I did. I was a beach baby, I was a California girl, and I went, but I wanted to try something else. I wanted to spread my wings. I wanted to go to the East Coast. I almost went to Pepperdine. I was this close, but then I said, let's try something different. And I loved college. And I think that my love for government and environmental studies was, I loved reading, I loved writing, I loved learning. I would continue to be in school right now if I could. I was one of the people who loved school. So then that seemed like I would go to law school and I would continue and all that. And that's part of the reason why I went down that path. But, I think when you're young, too, I was type A personality since I came out of the womb, I think. So I've always had a plan, and here's how things are going to go. And I think from the very beginning, the Lord was trying to show me, listen, sit back. I know you've got plans, but I'm going to establish your steps. So let's let me lead.
A-type personalities, I'm one. I spent 35 years in the corporate world before I went to full-time ministry and walked away from a senior executive position with a company that everybody's familiar with, Hewlett-Packard. Mm-hmm. And when I walked away, it was contrary to everything I had ever known, every foundational truth, every foundational principle of career planning and setting of goals and accomplishing of goals and measuring it by the size of your house and the kind of car and the country club you played at and those kind of things. But it was the Lord that got a hold of me at the age of 44. But your path changed along the way. Here you are in school to become a judge. You have this vision. You're in a university. You're learning about law, you're taking your courses, and along the way there's kind of an interruption, a break.
Right.
And during that break, the path kind of shifted. What happened?
It did. I actually ended up going back home right after college to try and save some money to go back to law school. I got accepted at Pepperdine. And I took a break to make some money, and I had always been in musical theater, so I was doing some acting and some small parts and things like that. And I got on a movie and decided, and it went through the time when that law school was going to start, so I deferred, and I continued to defer, and then decided, you know what, this is not where the Lord is leading me. I need to do something else. I don't really want to be a lawyer. I don't really want to be a judge. That was a hard time in my life to try and figure that stuff out, but it made all the difference in the world. And within a couple of years, I was working in Southern California, met my husband, and then things just continued to change.
So God brought you a man.
He did.
I'm sure that in your lifetime you had dated, you had relationships that might have even seemed to have been the one, but weren't.
Right.
And along comes your husband, and you get married in 2003. And he's a believer. You now have this cord of three strands that you heard so much about growing up. You're now equally yoked, which you heard so much about growing up. And
always.
You have this man, but he doesn't live in a house, does he?
No, he lived on a boat, which is part of the reason why I agreed to go out with him. I was always a big water baby, so he's like, yeah, I live on a boat, and I was like, oh, I'm in on that. So yeah, and he was great. I had fallen in love, and I'd had relationships before, and I always feel deeply. I mean, if you read the book, you'll understand that. I feel deeply. I'm very sensitive and very emotional, and I had my heart broken. I didn't expect to get married till I was 30. And all of a sudden at 23, I meet this man who is, he loves Jesus. He loves me. He was just so wonderful. And I thank God every single day. It was a quick courtship. We were engaged within a year and married a year later. And it was, to this day, the best decision I've ever made.
So you married Dan, and then you move from a boat to Las Vegas, Nevada.
Right. Well, we had a couple stops in between. We were on his boat. Then we moved up to Monterey, California. That's where I had my first job in news. And I was a reporter there, then an anchor, then quickly got the job in Las Vegas within 2 years, and we moved there, and that was a wonderful experience. We made some of our best friends. Our plan, and of course I had plans, right? Our plan was to get Kerstin's career going. Danny was able to move from place to place for his job. Once we hit San Diego, which is where I wanted to move and be an anchor, that was like my big ultimate goal. Then, babies happen, and we're going to do this within 3 years, and it's going to be great. And everything fell into place. I got the great job in San Diego. We moved. I was 28. It was great. We were living at the beach, and everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly.
But everything wasn't perfect, was it?
No. No, not at all. I mean, that's when we really became tested. And I mean, tested in so many levels. We were the first of our friends to try and have children. I always wanted to have children. I was an only child growing up. My parents adopted a baby when I was 15, who I love him to death, and he is my brother. And it's one of my pet peeves is always saying step brother or adopted brother,
right,
like he's my
right.
brother. But until I was 15, I was an only child, so I knew I wanted a little bit more than that, and I wanted to, I was just ready. And we got pregnant right away and had a miscarriage, and that was the last time ever in my life, and that was 11 years ago that I ever got pregnant naturally, ever. So it became a struggle from that first miscarriage on to build our family.
In that time of the jubilation of I'm pregnant, the next step of the dream is about to unfold. To the miscarriage, your response. Now, you're in an equally yoked marriage. Are you two attending a church? Are you involved in a church community?
Absolutely.
So you're fully expecting God to do all that you believe that He would do for you, the career, the husband, the lifestyle that you wanted, the family that you desired, and all of a sudden you're pregnant, you miscarry, and you have a different set of feelings, a whole new set of emotions set in.
Absolutely. I mean, it all fell apart. I mean, it truly did. And I think that through the entire process to try and build a family, and starting with that, I was pregnant. I was conscious of being pregnant for, 4 or 5 weeks, because I miscarried right around 9 or 10 weeks. We planned out our whole life. We started an addition on the house. Like, we were just, of course everything's going to work out. Of course, we tithe like they tell us to. We go to church twice a week like we're supposed to. I don't hold my faith back. I lead a Bible study. Like, I do everything the Lord tells us to do. So of course he's going to bless us. And then all of a sudden this happens, and it wasn't at that moment when I went, wait a minute, God, why are you doing this? I was just in too deep of a pain to start questioning. It took years in this process for me to start going, why am I not being rewarded by my works? And that's one of the big things I learned, that the Lord is going to bless you anyway. It's not based on your works. I was so busy trying to be the perfect Christian so that he would bless me. He's going to bless you anyway, no matter what you do, even if you aren't the perfect Christian. But back to that moment, I mean, it ruined us. I mean, I was so hurt and so sad. And in the beginning, I thought, okay, we'll just get pregnant again right away. But then month after month turned into year after year of failed infertility, and trying everything we could to build a family. And it's all I could focus on. And everything around us started to crumble. My marriage included, my relationships with friends and family. It just became all kind of shrouded in a big dark cloud of, something's wrong with me and I can't have a baby.
The question becomes why you miscarried, and then why you couldn't get pregnant.
Right. And what's frustrating with that is they don't know. I mean, the statistics out there are most women will have a miscarriage. Most women will have a miscarriage. And as soon as I started talking about the fact that I had one, it was person after person. Oh, I had one. I had one. But quietly. And I'm wondering why these women would have a miscarriage and, like I did, the next day go back to work. You get a cold and you take a couple weeks off. You get sick and or somebody in your family dies. Your pet passes. At any of those things, you take time to grieve and you take time to work. And I think in our society, we've minimized what this can do to women, and it can have a profound impact on you. So when I started hearing more and more women, and I'm wondering, why aren't we talking about this? Why aren't we supporting each other? And I think it goes back to, in the past, even a decade, 2-3 decades ago, it was shame, because you don't know why you miscarry. And science doesn't 100% know. It's usually a chromosomal thing. It's not your fault 99.9% of the time, but we don't talk about it because we're ashamed. And I wanted that to stop. So I started talking about it. We went to the doctor, and after a year and change of processes, it was unexplained infertility, which again is one of the most popular types of infertility, is unexplained. And when there's a problem, you can fix it. When they don't know what the problem is, it's just constantly in your mind. Anytime you have something wrong with you, you're like, what is going on? And that's very, very hard to wrap your head around and come to peace with.
When you look at your response to the frustration that envelops this entire, it's really more than frustration, it's confusion,
right,
which is of course the number one tool that the enemy uses in our lives, is confusion, distraction. You take your eye off the mark and you focus on that. You're not focusing on the Lord. You're not focusing on the family. You're focusing on the distraction, which then becomes the God, becomes the idol, becomes the focus, and
right,
everything else begins to pale. And you've got a husband on the other end who is grieving for his wife, does not know how to fix, and we're fixers, does not know how to repair the situation. What's going on between you and Dan while you're going through this personal struggle, and yet you're still going to work,
Right.
You're still making a living. He's still doing what he does, but the dynamic has got to have changed.
Right, and even more so with him. I mean, he was grieving the loss, the baby that we lost originally, and the subsequent, and the month after month of fertility treatments not working. But most of all, and talking to him in years past, when we decided to go through some of this again, he said, I just can't, seeing you in so much pain, seeing you on the floor, IVF is torture for a lot of women, and it was for me. I did not respond well. It was awful. It was painful, and to see you on the floor in pain during that, to see you in, excruciating pain in the middle of the night during another miscarriage, all of those things. Like, he's like, I just, I am his love and his first love, and it was so hard for him to see me like that, whereas I was grieving internally for what was happening to me. He was so focused on how painful it was to watch his wife go through this. And I found, and we went to therapy right away, which I highly recommend anybody who's going through infertility, adoption, miscarriage, all those things, just life. It's good to talk to somebody. And if you can find a faith-based professional, oh my goodness, a spiritual director, somebody. We were in therapy, and I finally, after the fact, was able to figure out I was in so much pain that I wanted the pain to stop. So I started creating pain in other places. I would ignore my husband. I would stay out. I would try and create other problems so that I'd have something else to focus on. So I wasn't every single day coming home, taking my temperature, taking another drug, having, sex that wasn't pleasurable, all that kind of stuff that was painful to me. So that's where the real scary part happened. And I think that if you're a woman who's going through this, it can be alcohol abuse. It can be, addiction to exercise. It can be anything for that. For me, I had to have something else to focus on. And that's where our marriage really started to suffer.
How did you get through that?
By the grace of God. Absolutely 100%. Even though I was in pain, I think when I was so close to stepping outside of my marriage, to looking to another man to make me feel better, all those type of things, I was so close. But, the Lord was there with me. It wasn't like I turned my back on him. Even though I felt like he wasn't loving me, I now know he was through that entire thing. And it was the grace of the God that he came down and he stopped me and fixed us and repaired us, and we're stronger now today because of the things that we've been through. But oh my goodness, if I had not had my relationship with the Lord, I wouldn't have a marriage. I wouldn't. It's only by his grace that we're still together.
As little as we hear from women about miscarriage, we hear exponentially less from the husbands that suffer along the side of the wife.
Absolutely.
Who is going through that. There's really no voice I've ever heard that talks about the other side of infertility, and that is the man, and whether he's the cause. And he may, in many cases, it is diagnosed that the man
could be the man, right?
Could be the source of the problem with quality, quantity, whatever the genetics are. And there has to be a certain amount of guilt that's associated with that, self-recrimination, questioning, struggling with worthiness, being able to be loved, failing to provide even the most basic of functions, which is God's instruction to be fruitful and multiply.
Yeah.
And you can't be fruitful, and you're not multiplying, and you're facing all this. So you get to a point where you're coming to finding a certain equilibrium, but you still don't have an answer, do you?
No.
You're still infertile.
Mm-hmm.
In vitro is, you're taking injections, you're taking every measurement, you're giving yourself shots daily, 4 times a day.
Which I could never do. Thankfully, my husband could. I could never shoot myself. I could never do the shots.
So he was able to participate in that and
Absolutely.
Be a coach and a partner. But that's not exactly how it all worked out, where in vitro was the answer you got first?
No. We did go through, a couple of IUIs, which, if you've never been through this type of thing, that's more of like just the turkey basting. That's an easier procedure. You still take a lot of drugs in the beginning. And then we did go to IVF, and that's where the woman actually does go get her eggs harvest, which is a true surgery. So they take the eggs out, and then they fertilize them, and then they put them back in later on. We went through that once, and we had a lot of really good quality eggs. So we had like 24 chances at a child, frozen, but it didn't work the first time. And by that time, we had already decided he has an adopted sister, and I have an adopted brother. So my mother-in-law actually said to us that year, it was like year 3 or 4, and she's like, "There's going to be a baby this year. There just is. There's going to be a baby this year." And she's like, "We will do anything we have to," and thank the Lord for their support, because it's so expensive. Fertility treatments, everything you go through is so expensive, and they were helping us out. And they were the ones who said, "Why don't you do the adoption thing?" And we said yes right away. It wasn't a big discussion for us, because we had lived through adoption before. We believed it was wonderful, and the goal was a baby. Like, we wanted a family. We wanted to grow a family. It didn't matter if we found it under a rock. So we signed up with a facilitator. And but we continued. We still had one more round on our insurance of fertility treatment. So while we were in the adoption process, we were still going through fertility treatments at the same time. But nothing was working. I mean, it was a very difficult and emotional adoption process too, just like getting pregnant.
Well, you went through simultaneously invasive processes. What the general public doesn't understand about adoption is that, and you and I shared off air earlier, that I adopted in California. I was vetted more extensively than a Syrian refugee.
Absolutely.
I had my entire history, family history, neighborhood history, financial history, fingerprinted, photographed. I'm in every registry and checked against every registry that exists within law enforcement. And we're talking about 1989. Imagine what it's like.
And you have to pay for every single one of those forms and calls,
Right.
and it's crazy.
It is. You have to be interrogated, fingerprinted and interrogated by the local sheriff's department, who then certifies you as a good citizen before you can go to the national FBI database and be interviewed by the FBI. The documents, the photographs, the home visits, the independent psychological evaluations, the employment history, in my case, the history of my family's immigration to America, to who I was and what I was doing. And at that time, I actually was in a company where I had government clearance. So I had to go through an adjunct clearance process because I had already been vetted. Now I had to go deeper, as if I was being considered for another clearance, and this was in order to adopt a child.
Right.
The cost was in excess of $30,000.
And that was in, what, 89?
1989, in excess of $30,000, because you cannot negotiate with the birth mother. There has to be an intermediary, otherwise you're buying a child. So
Right.
you have an attorney, an adoption agency, who are the ones that the rights are relinquished to the adoption agency. Then you have to become a certified foster parent under the California system, which requires that you graduate from their coursework so that you can then receive the baby, who the custodial rights are given to the agency. They place them with you. Then you go through the rest of the process as it completes, and everybody's getting paid along the way.
Everybody.
And in our case, the birth mother was 16, had no insurance, Therefore, all of the hospital, the medical, all of the pre-birth and after care had to be provided by us because there were no social services available for this kind of scenario. And this is 28 years ago. I'm sure lots have changed, things have changed, but
not by much.
Yeah.
And that's what's sad about this. I mean, the adoption process is broken. I mean, it's very broken on both sides, not only for the adoptive parents, and there's so many parents out there who want to be, and also for the birth parents who this is such a horrible, hard thing to go through, and then also for the kids who are waiting. It's broken everywhere. I mean, it costs a couple $100s to get rid of a baby, and it costs tens of thousands of dollars to save one. That's wrong.
It is. We're talking with Kerstin Lindquist, author of the newly released book 5 Months Apart. We have yet to come to the question of a story of adoption and infertility, and you have 2 daughters who were born 5 months apart.
I do. 2 daughters born 5 months apart.
And they are not twins.
They are not.
And so you scratch your head and you wonder, how did such a thing occur? And we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to visit with Kerstin and find out how she has 2 daughters 5 months apart. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only 2 ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere, and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the Heartlines, and Biblical Truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our one-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're visiting this morning with journalist and popular QVC host, Kerstin Lindquist, author of a book entitled 5 Months Apart, touted as a hopeful story of adoption and infertility with a tremendous foundation of faith. Kerstin, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You wrote that 5 Months Apart is intended to help women come out of this society-imposed seclusion, to cry and scream and stomp their feet, to engage in productive and progressive discussion, and through it all believe in the ultimate happy ending, a successful pregnancy and adoption.
Right.
I can see a successful pregnancy and adoption as being two very independent actions. Somebody else gets pregnant and you're the beneficiary through adoption. But in your particular case, the ultimate happy ending was a combination of a successful pregnancy and an adoption.
Yeah. I mean, I think both of those things, either whether you are a hopeful waiting adopted family, which there are so many out there right now, you see them everywhere on social media, you talk to them, that's their ultimate happy ending, is to be able to finally have a baby and adopt. And then you see all these women going through fertility treatments and these couples who are going through this, and their ultimate happy ending is to actually get pregnant and have a healthy baby. For us, again, I was a type A, I was a planner, we did both at the same time. I think after years and years of unsuccessful fertility treatments, I never really thought it was going to happen. I truly believe that wasn't the Lord's path for me. And we were in the midst of adopting, and we went with a high-risk agency, a facilitator, because we really had no money, and it's such an expensive thing, and they were much less expensive. But we would get calls at night for babies who were sick and being born in the hospital, or a woman who had just given birth and she had CP and she might have been on meth, but the baby looks okay. Do you want to adopt this baby? We got those calls all the time. And so even while we were going through that, we're like, are we ever going to have a baby? Because is this what the Lord wants us to do? Are we supposed to take a special needs child? In the midst of the adoption process and all its ups and downs and how stressful it was, we did do one more round of fertility treatments, and it worked. We got pregnant while we were adopting. Now everybody says, oh, you relaxed because you were adopting and you had a baby, and that's not true. You hear about that from time to time, but only because it's like a shark attack. Like when it happens, you hear about it, right? It's not that it happens all the time. And I wasn't relaxed. I was very stressed out because we had been matched with a woman who was 4 months pregnant, but it was a very tumultuous adoption. She was at risk in a very bad area. It was extremely expensive. Every single day was a different phone call and a different problem and a different thing. So I was not relaxed. But somehow within all of this, I got pregnant and we started to adopt at the same time. And because I had so many miscarriages, we didn't talk a whole lot about the pregnancy, which was because I was so scared, which I think is a miss for a lot of women too. It's one of those things where your doctor tells you to wait until your second trimester to tell people you're pregnant. And I always think that that's kind of a dated way of thinking. I think as a woman these days, if you have a miscarriage, you're going to need those people around you that you would have told you were having a baby. So I think that there are certain people that you have to tell right when you find out, so that they can be a part of it with you. So if something does happen, you have people to grieve with. That was one of my big lessons from it. But we hadn't told a lot of people because they knew we were adopting. We told everybody we were adopting. We were shouting it from the rooftops. But then all of a sudden we got pregnant as well. And we had our children 5 months apart.
So here you have a successful pregnancy, you deliver, and 5 months later you bring home a baby girl.
Backwards. So our adopted daughter was born first.
Okay.
I was in the delivery room, 4 months pregnant, with and our adopted daughter was born first. And then my biological daughter unwillingly was yanked from my body almost 10 months after being pregnant.
So how did this, you're now pregnant, holding a baby in your arms, expecting to hold another baby in your arms, and you at some point look back over in a quiet moment and a moment of contemplation as to how God had so circuitously navigated to a point of what would appear to be tragedy turned into a double portion.
Double blessing.
When no blessing could have even been anticipated. Here you were handed a double blessing.
Yeah, I mean, I hold on to that and my two gorgeous, amazing daughters as proof that God's plan is always better. You don't necessarily know what it's going to be, but his plan is always better. So I find that through all of this, joy and pain are so close together. The tears that I shed of pain for almost 4 years, month after month, and through all of the ups and downs, and through getting a phone call that the birth mother, oh, she has a bullet in her back, we're not sure how it's going to deliver, everything that happened, and losing another baby, and then almost losing my husband, and things like that, the pain and the just the guttural level of that, and then fast forward to years later when I have these two amazing beings who are perfect, healthy baby girls, and the tears of joy, they're so close. That feeling is so close. And I think that when you're so close to never being a mother or never have, and it doesn't have to be just about motherhood. It could be that thing that the Lord has put on you that you want more than anything. When you're so close to never having that and really having to start to come to terms with, oh my goodness, that might never be my path. Once you get it, it's that much more precious. And I would sit in my car crying from joy just as much as from the pain that I went through for so many years. I still do. My daughter, just the other day, I was listening to the song and I was crying and talking about how it reminded me of them and how happy I was. And my daughter's like, Mom, you should really not listen to the song if it makes you cry. And I'm like, but it's just that weight of that pain that you went through so long, and now it's so good. It's so good.
When you tell your story, you tell it in such a personal style that you walk us by your side as if we are experiencing this with you.
Right.
It is not a book looking for sympathy. Mm-mm. It is a book that drives you to empathy as a shared experience, maybe driven by the relationship you have with your QVC family, which I'm a big Shark Tank guy, so I see Lori Grenier all the time and talks about the QVC family, that this whole concept of
such a family,
that it is a family, that when I hear people where I speak talk about their moms on watching QVC, and they know who's getting married, they know who's having kids, they know what's going on. They're waiting for that next. It's almost a soap opera with the ability to buy products.
Yeah, and actually, Lori actually, she actually wrote part of the foreword for the book. She's great. Something that we hadn't even talked about, this entire thing happened while I was live on television. I was in news, and I was a local newscaster at the time. But I have a very hard time, which is part of the reason why it's so great that, I'm at this multi-platform retailer now, is because I have a hard time covering up my emotions. Mm-hmm. And in news, you have to do that a lot. Where I work now, be a real person, which is great because I am. So it was hard to keep it a secret what I was going through for so many years. And I didn't when I was in the news. And I started blogging, which was before blogging was really, really popular. My employer had me do that. And it was because women started pouring in going, oh my goodness, I didn't know you were going through this. I went through this. Or my granddaughter's doing this, And I started hearing more and more about it. And women would find me in their pain and be like, how did you survive this? I've had miscarriages. Can't adopt. I feel like I'm at the bottom. How did you survive this? So I would tell my story so frequently. And when I moved to my current employer, there was even more social media out there, and I was able to tell my story. While I was on the air and things like that. And the letters and the people pouring in. So I fought the Lord a little bit on writing this book because it was a painful process. People go, oh, it must have been cathartic. And it was painful. We were going through another really difficult adoption while I was writing this. So I pull a lot from that as well. But I knew that he was telling me that I had to tell it truthfully. And I had to let people know that there is no shame in miscarriage and infertility. There is no shame in your family being built through adoption. And so many people would whisper to me, we're thinking of adopting, or, oh yeah, well I have a goddaughter that's adopted. And I'm like, why are you whispering about it? This is, any way a child comes is beautiful, and we need to embrace it. So I really felt like I needed to tell it as raw and unfiltered as possible so that people could see themselves in it and understand that those feelings that you're having and the way that you're dealing with things, it's okay, and you just have to have faith and keep going.
As Dan traversed this with you,
right,
what was it that you found out about him that you didn't know before?
He is by far the most supportive person ever. He always, when I was going through this book, and I thank him in the very beginning, because I say, he could have said no. I talk a lot about our relationship, and everybody knows, my kids go to a faith-based school, and, our pastors know, their teachers know, like everybody knows what we went through as a family now. And he said yes because he wanted to help other people too. And I think that I always knew that he was so loving and caring and supportive, but he has this side of him that he wants to make it all okay for everybody else as well. And he wants to make a difference and have an imprint. He always let me do it. I was always the one who was out there, fixing things and starting the Bible study and talking to people on TV and having women out to lunch. But he wants to do that same thing. And that was such a wonderful thing for me to figure out about him, is that he has this heart of service that a lot of men hide because they're too busy, doing the job and making the money and doing that. And he wants to serve too. And this book, I always say it's ours. It's his way of serving through our family as well.
Miscarriage, infertility are something that are so personal, that touch families in such a private way that they really don't feel comfortable sharing that they're going through it.
Right.
The support systems that are out there, and I just had a couple very, very close to me just hit the point of finding out that it wasn't going to work, that the eggs weren't viable, and this was now at this age, it just was not. This was the final answer, and a dream, a lifetime dream as a child of being a mom, and to a baby that she carried to term, that answer was no. It was an absolute no. There was nothing left on the other side of it.
Right.
The process was over. And I'm watching as they are mourning and grieving as you would the loss of a child, because it is the loss of a child. But because we don't know, we don't have the information, we don't make the connection, we're not aware, we don't know how to support. We don't know how to be there. We don't know what is needed. And so the go-to default response for most people is to do nothing.
Right.
And is to say nothing. And to not ask probative questions, wanting to leave the entire responsibility on, well, if they want us to know what's going on, they'll tell us. It's a very private. Pregnancy is very public.
Mm-hmm.
You can't hide a pregnant woman.
No, you can't.
But what it took to get there, for some it's so natural, so easy, and so taken for granted that there is absolutely no appreciation whatsoever for the ease of the natural process. Then you have those on the other side of the equation, those are the ones that have battled infertility, the ones that have endured the invasive process of adoption, which is an antiquated, it's a broken system. There are children not getting placed. There's programs in almost every city where you can make a fortune by being a foster parent and keeping children from permanent placement, because we are compensating at such a high level that there are professional foster parents who are making a great living on supporting children in a system that is an old, antiquated system. You have a platform to talk about this. You have QVC, you have your blog, you have KerstinLindquist.com. What is it that you want to see happen?
There's so many different levels. I mean, my after our last adoption, specifically my husband and I said, when this is all over, we really need to seriously figure out how we can help change the adoption process, because it is so broken and there's so many scams out there, and it's just feeding on people who have their hearts broken. But simpler than that, one of the reasons why I wrote the book wasn't just for women and men like myself and my husband, was for the parents, the grandparents, the friends, the people who have never been through this, will never go through this, who have their friends and their sisters and their daughters going through this and don't know what to say. There's a whole chapter in the book that a lot of my relationships were scarred for life, and we're still building on, repairing those because what was said during these times. When you don't know what it's like to lose a baby or to even lose a placement. We went through a time where we were with a birth mother for 4 months. We were ready, the baby was going to come home, and she changed her mind right when baby was born. I mean, that's a loss of a child too. When you don't know what to say to somebody in those situations, it can break your relationship. So I tell people to pick up the book, talk to me, find me on social media, all those types of things, ask questions. I have a daughter going through this, what do I say to her? And you're right, there's not one size fits all, but I think the big message is don't walk away from it because you're scared and you don't know what to say. Don't placate with things like, oh, it all turns out for a reason, and oh, God has a plan, it's all going to be okay. Even though I'm the first person to say God has a plan, in the moment after your daughter has a miscarriage, that's not the time to say it. I think that what we want when we are parents who in waiting, who have lost a baby through miscarriage, through adoption, whatever it might be, is validity that really happened. Mm-hmm. That was really a child. That was really a time. I think a lot of people try to, oh, you were only 8 weeks pregnant, it really didn't happen. Oh, that was just an adoption, it wasn't really your baby. Bring them food, leave it on their doorstep. Call once a week, even if they don't want to talk to you. Send cards a month later and say, I know you're still going through a hard time. Validate that this was a part of their life, because it'll be something that that woman in waiting or that couple in waiting, even if they have a child 2 years, 3 years down the line, or already have one, will always remember. And as a society, I think we try to make adoptive parents and parents who have lost children through, who haven't come out of the womb yet, make it seem like it didn't really happen, and it did. I know women who've had adoption, who've lost babies through miscarriage, who the year of, I know the date of my first miscarriage. A year later, they think about it. 2 years later, it's a hard season in their life every April, because that's when I miscarried the first time. So just give validity. Don't try and make it go away.
Kerstin, do you think that because we have legislated abortion, that we take a miscarried child, baby, and somehow put it in that category and say, well, it wasn't really viable? To the woman that chooses to terminate a pregnancy, that's her justification. That does not translate to a mother nurturing and raising and trying to grow a child in her womb.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I think that women who choose to abort, that might be one of their justifications, and they look to, oh, there's miscarriages all the time, this is just like that. When you're a woman who wants a baby, who has had a miscarriage, the second you know you're pregnant, your life changes. The second, the way you feel about yourself, the way you carry yourself, your thoughts, the second that life starts, at conception, but for sure by the moment you find out that you're pregnant.
I'm wondering if the barb on the message to this liberal world that says a woman can do whatever they want with their body and terminate whenever they want, if you were to ask them if they miscarried and they wanted the child, would it be less viable? Would it be less meaningful because they could have adopted or aborted at the exact same time? Is it the circumstance that changes the viability of life, or is life established by God, period? And that
Right.
This message and this somehow interconnecting the timing of early term miscarriage and abortion and seeing the parallels and trying to redefine some of the narrative and making it that much more personal may save tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of babies when they begin to have that feeling that this really is my child.
Right. My daughter, my adopted daughter, her birth mother went to get an abortion 3 times. And again, by the grace of God, first couple of times there was something, she was sick, it was whatever it might be. And then that 3rd time that she went there was a woman there who said, let's talk about adoption. Let's have a conversation about that. Didn't scare her, didn't throw a scary sign in her face, didn't yell at her, said, let's have a conversation, I know you're hurting. And my, wonderful birth mother, through everything that she went through, she chose to save that life, even though I'm pretty sure giving up my daughter was the hardest thing she's ever been through in her entire life. It would have been easier to abort her, but she didn't. And I every time I think about her, I think, thank the Lord there was somebody there to talk to her. Thank the Lord there was a conversation, and not something scary, but a conversation.
Kerstin, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story with us. 5 months apart, a story of infertility and grace. This miracle, 2 daughters born 5 months apart, one through in vitro fertilization, the other through adoption, that have bonded as sisters who wear the same clothes, play with the same toys, share a room together, could have not been more knit together in the natural than they have been in the supernatural. And we just pray incredible blessings upon you and Dan and your 3 wonderful children, and that your story will pierce the hearts of those who have felt the pain of infertility, felt the pain of miscarriage, and have come to the crossroads of, I'm carrying a child that I might not want to raise. But let me tell you, there's people like myself, there are people like the Lindquist family, and tens of thousands of other families who would love to adopt that child and raise them as their own.
Absolutely.
I know, Kerstin knows firsthand, the lifetime of love and the choice that you make to give that love unconditionally each and every single day, no different than you would if that child grew under your heart. Kerstin Lindquist, thank you. We look forward to seeing you Saturday mornings on QVC and to join your QVC family. And we appreciate you so much being here with us on Revealing the Truth.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we will bring you the next edition of Revealing the Truth.